You ready? Shall I start? Okay. Yeah, Pillar, what decision about this is a PP seminar notes, pre-seminar in-room housekeeping. Toilets are located down the corridor and to your left. Emergency exit located in the same direction. And please turn your mobile phones off or on silent, please. So, good morning and welcome to the Northern Institute People Policy in Place Seminar Series for 2026. Thanks to the RSS team for organising all of those and to our special guest speaker, Sharna Motlap. Sharna is a research fellow, and you can ask her questions at the end of her presentation. And Sharna's a Mabaram, I probably said that wrong, from Queensland, and Kiriri Island from Torres Strait Island. Today's seminar has Indigenous researcher sharing a two-phase research journey grounded in Indigenous leadership, philosophy and creativity through the artworks, workshops and exhibition making. This research centres Indigenous art voices to communicate climate impacts to country. These insights are woven into a co-designed community resilience plan, supporting culturally grounded approaches to climate preparedness, mitigation and adaptation across the Indigenous and Western systems. Without further ado, I should like to welcome Sharna.
Thank you, Professor Linda, for that wonderful introduction. So I'll just tell you a little bit more about myself. My name is Sharna Motlap. I'm a research fellow at Northern Institute. So my mob is in Barbaram from North Queensland, think Cairns, Atherton region. And on my mother's side is Torres Strait Islander, so we're from the Hammond Island or the Kiriri Island. Currently, I'm a master's student studying a Masters of Public Health and a Masters of Health Research, hopefully finishing this year, and then enrolling into a PhD. So about this project, just a little bit of background for everybody. So art has always been a part of our story as Indigenous people. We use it for storytelling, knowledge sharing, and recording the country around us. Connection to country is the foundation to Indigenous identity, belief systems, and cultural practices. It is an important factor of our health and well-being. So our approach in this project understands that caring for country is an ancient and ongoing practice through which Indigenous peoples have looked after the lands and the waters. This project is about making sure Indigenous voices are leading the way when we talk about healing from climate change. So historically, cultural and communication gaps between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples have created significant barriers to improving health and social outcomes. So by using art as a primary medium, we are breaking down those barriers. Climate change is impacting Indigenous people all over Australia, and we're being impacted disproportionately. This research adopts a holistic view of climate change, so we're focusing not just on physical data, but also how climate change is lived and how it is experienced. We're documenting these experiences through art. We are also capturing strategies and solutions used to reimagine its representation. So in a nutshell, in this project, we use the Indigenous art as the evidence. So in order to do that, we've applied a framework. This project is firmly grounded in the Ruk-Muk-Muk-Mudanungu philosophy developed by Professor Ford. This project applies the Wukama and the Murwana philosophy. The Murwana is the cycad. They're a valuable food source. The cycad nuts are a food source, but they require careful preparation and processing. The Wukama is the work. It's the processing of the Murwana through the wukama to make sure it is safe to consume and share with everybody. In this context, the moana represents Indigenous knowledges. Wukama is the respectful and reciprocal work required to prepare and integrate this knowledge alongside Western scientific frameworks. Our process is dedicated to this work, or the wukama, in ensuring that the resulting co-design community resilience plan is nourishing. This means it is both culturally relevant for Indigenous communities and applicable within Western institutions. So this framework is an analogy for the process of making space for Indigenous knowledge in Western institutions. In this project, we use it to apply art as a baseline for climate resilience. So this project, we aim to understand Indigenous art world perspectives on climate impacts on country. And we do this by examining Indigenous artworks and observing the artistic process. In doing this, this project addresses 3 core HEAL aims. We're protecting community health, strengthening health system resilience, and reducing inequities exposed by climate change. This project utilizes a participatory action research, qualitative design. This project is structured in 2 key phases. Phase 1 focuses on the creation and analysis of Indigenous artworks. This involves workshops with Indigenous people from both Darwin and Mackay, and will eventually be showcased in a pop-up art exhibition here at Charles Darwin University. Phase 2 moves through a co-design community resilience plan. By using Indigenous art and art world perspectives as a baseline, our communities of practice will work to embed the systemic Indigenous engagement into environmental change preparedness. Now, this entire process is guided by Indigenous Advisory Group. So here's just a quick overview of phase 1. So we examine existing Indigenous art of climate impacts on country. We produce new art through these workshops, and these workshops are titled Climate Impacts on Country. And then we also have an exhibition as part of phase 1. So normally I would have provided a nice clear flowchart of steps for this phase, but unfortunately not everything goes according to plan, which I will address later. And so just a little bit more detail about phase 1. Over the course of this project, several workshops titled Climate Impacts on Country were held in person and online with 4 Indigenous artists from Darwin and then 3 Indigenous artists from Mackay, Queensland. Now, the aim of these sessions was for Indigenous artists to express their own interpretations of the theme. While we initially planned for 2 sessions, our strong community partnerships enabled us to scale up to 12 sessions. This expansion allowed us to capture a much larger and much richer qualitative data set. This data set included organic discussions, artist descriptions, and of course, the original Indigenous artworks. So this project actually also includes 2 mother and daughter artist dyads. So this includes 2 Torres Strait Islander artists who's from Mackay, whose artistic process has been guided by their cultural knowledge and also their experience in the Indigenous health services. This partnership ensures traditional ecological knowledge is preserved and actively adapted by the next generation. They are collaborating to demonstrate how the medium of art can be used effectively to engage people, health service providers, and researchers on climate and health issues. So through these sessions, the project documents specific environmental and cultural losses as seen through the eyes of the Indigenous artists in Darwin and in Mackay. And so I'll just get into some of the artwork. So this painting is by a Mackay artist. It's titled 10 Mile, and it explores the deep connection to 10 Mile and Tiwi Islands in the Northern Territory. For the artist, 10 Mile is a sacred family site and is defined by memories of family gatherings and bush camping. These memories include fishing, hunting for mussels, periwinkles and crabs, as well as storytelling, sharing knowledge, understanding and learning the ways, and understanding belonging. However, the river at the back is slowly eroding. As ice melts and sea levels rise, that river widens. 10 Mile is now at a threat of disappearing, and this is captured by the artist by showing the creek and is slowly cutting into the land. There is a deep concern that future generations may never get to experience the beauty or the ancestral traditions of these family camping trips. As the artist states, 10 Mile and our important piece of paradise is slowly being covered by rising sea levels. The same artist also created this piece on billy goat plums. The artist discusses growing up and eating billy goat plums. The artist states, "When we felt sick, our parents would tell us to eat up them plums to make you feel strong again. If you ever eaten billy goat plums, you know how sour they are." Now, despite this, the billy goat plum is a valued and important tree. The plums have a high concentration of vitamin C. So it is both a traditional food and a traditional medicine. The artist communicates how the shifting weather patterns, rain, humidity, and heat, bushfires, all contribute to altering the fruit's vitamin C nutritional value, growth, and seasonal changes. This threatens the billy goat plum tree and consequently also threatens cultural practices. The message is communicated in the painting by a powerful split view. On the green side, you can see that the tree is healthy and full of fruit. And then on the yellow side, the tree is dying and the land is dry and the land is brittle. This art comes from a Torres Strait Islander artist in Mackay. This artwork focuses on the impact of climate change on our beaches and the sea, the very foundation of their life and family connection. For those in the room today with us, we have the artwork displayed over there. The artist's deep spiritual connection to the salt water, which brings healing to the mind, body, and spirit, is threatened by pollution. The artwork effectively uses the canvas to show the visible difference between the healthy salt water and the polluted salt water. And so I just want to bring your attention to the footsteps at the bottom of this painting. So the beach sand with the footprints, it represents us, and we're walking along clean sand that slowly turns dirty, leaving its mark on places that we love and where we belong, living by a beautiful beach. The core message from this artist is that we take care of the places and the places take care of us. When the country is sick, the people are sick. This is another painting, this is a painting by another Mackay artist. This artist paints the climate impacts on the Great Barrier Reef. In this underwater scene, the saturated colors of the healthy coral are juxtaposed in contrast with the bone-white skeleton structures of the bleached coral. The devastating mass bleaching events are changing the Great Barrier Reef from bright to white, as per the title of this painting. The Great Barrier Reef is a prominent feature of Queensland coast and remains central to sea country of approximately 7 Indigenous groups. Land and sea country includes all living things, beliefs, values, creation stories, spirits, and cultural obligations. This also refers to an interdependent relationship between traditional owners and their lands. And as shown by the other art, when sea country is impacted, so are the people. This painting illustrates the complex ecological knowledge and depicts the symbiotic relationship between fire management, performance, and climate adaptation. This painting was done by an artist here in Darwin, and it's a painting of an event that happened on her country. From the artist, within the fire painting, the Pilu, or the men, perform songs and dance at multiple levels that point to the contextual heritage of the country. The Pilu are performing inside the black circles and spot fires started by the falcon. Both living and non-living Pilu are embodied within the ever-changing environmental habitat, where building on symbiotic connections, their survival is reliant on the ability to adapt and change, adapt to climate and environmental changes. This painting is by an artist in Darwin, and this painting is also in the room with us today. So this painting depicts a central whale tail. Now, despite the painting being named Migaloo, this represents a regular whale or an average person. The swirling lines in this painting represent the disruption caused by climate change. Erratic weather, changing seasons, like disrupting the ecosystem in which the whale lives. The white lines of this painting represent the bleached coral and the changing environment. Now, the gold streaks represent the sunlight that sustains life. However, the sunlight is also caught up in the disruption. The title Migaloo serves as a reminder of selective empathy. By using the fame of the iconic white whale to represent a regular whale, the artist suggests that society often only grants its attention and care when a crisis is impacting something familiar. The central whale tail also symbolizes the largest creature on the planet and how it is also being impacted by climate change. The artist intends these lines to represent disruption to the ecosystem itself. The vibrant pulses represent the vibrant pulses of gold represent the sunlight. And the core message from this artist is that climate change is affecting us all, big and small. And so we want to showcase all this beautiful art in a pop-up art exhibition. So we organized it to originally happen in November. There would be a morning tea and a panel discussion, and we invite everyone to join us to have a meaningful conversation about country and about climate change. We even had one of the Mackay artists fly up to join us for this event. Now, unfortunately, Cyclone Fina came to Darwin the day of the exhibition, so we had to cancel it. We had to cancel our exhibition due to real-life climate impacts on country. I think a small silver lining of this is that we've had time to create additional paintings and collect some more data for this project. But we have rescheduled. So we've rescheduled the 10th of April, and it is right here in CDU, just on level 1. In phase 2, this co-design community resilience plan. The team of this co-design plan includes Indigenous Advisory Group, which has 2 Indigenous people from Mackay and 2 from Darwin. We have Indigenous researchers. We have the Indigenous artists, and they're providing their art and their perspectives on climate impacts on country. And then we also have engaged the Heal Antique communities of practice to provide their expertise in Northern Territory climate research. So this phase is where the wukama, or the work, is fully realized, and the artwork becomes our direct, actionable data. Indigenous art is used as the baseline tool. Communities of practice embed systemic engagement in the plan. The plan is guided by the Indigenous Advisory Group and embedded into a monitoring and evaluation framework. Now, this planning happens through our communities of practice, where we're bringing together everyone, the artists, the decision makers, and the researchers. This entire process remains Indigenous-led and is continuously guided by our Indigenous Advisory Group. So this co-design method is making sure that Indigenous engagement is built into the very system, into how we prepare for climate change. So the artwork, while it is beautiful, is not just added to the plan as decoration. The Indigenous artwork is added to the plan as a tool, and in which we're using. So we're using Indigenous perspectives into every stage, from mitigation design to adaptation strategies, as part of this co-design plan. And our aim is to deliver a plan that is both culturally relevant, locally owned, and embedded into a continuous monitoring and evaluation framework. So some of the preliminary results. From the art and the data collected, we can see that there is clear evidence of localized disruption. So sometimes we like to use the terms like global warming and climate change, and it feels very far removed from us. However, in this project, the Indigenous artists aren't speaking about global warming abstractly. They are showing specific threats, such as erosion to sacred sites like 10 Mile or mass coral bleaching. Secondly, we found acute food system vulnerability. The art shows how changes in rainfall and heat immediately threatening traditional foods and medicine sources. Thirdly, cultural health is impacted when country is impacted. The artist repeatedly emphasized that when country is sick, community, spiritual, and individual health are all compromised. The climate impacts on country lead to threat of cultural loss, preventing current generations from passing on deep knowledge embedded in land and sea. The art is providing localized qualitative evidence, and this is required to make our community resilience plan effective and culturally safe. In conclusion, Healing from Country for Country project uses art as a tool for observation, communication, and healing. And it has also used this data about climate impacts on country. This project, grounded in the Wukama philosophy, provides an ethical framework to act on this evidence. Our approach strengthens our entire health system by proving that the health of country is inseparable from the health of communities. So the cancellation of our original event due to Cyclone Fina serves as a real-world reminder as to why this work matters. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you about all the recent events happening across the Northern Territory and Queensland right now. Climate change is very impactful to everyday life. And so I'll leave you with that, but I would like to invite you all to join us on April 10th, 2006 at our rescheduled exhibition. We want to have this conversation safely outside of cyclone season and then work together to ensure that this knowledge is embedded and that the art leads the way towards a resilient future. Because as our artists have shown us, when we take care of the places, they will take care of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharna. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. Don't go away. Because, hey, we'll now take questions. And before we do that, I'd just like to acknowledge the people that are on Teams that have joined us, which I forgot to do at the beginning. So any questions for Sharna?
Yeah. Hi, Sharna. Thanks for the presentation. And I think that you only need a microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Can I catch you? Come on.
Well done, Jenny.
So, couple of things. Firstly, the use of art as a way to represent Indigenous knowledge and as a way to bring that into universities to kind of address epistemic questions of justice and to widen the framework of what counts as knowledge, I think is really important and significant in this project. And maybe, I'm not sure if you're thinking about how to count the exhibition as a research output for yourselves, but you should, because there's an increasing framework at CDU to recognise creative practice as a way of generating research results that hold the research in different forms. So we can talk more about that if you like later. The question, or what I'd like you to explain or expand on a little bit more, is about how the paintings themselves facilitate the resilience planning. Because I think it's quite often that paintings are used to express concern about country or climate in different fields, but I'm really intrigued by how they actually work in practice to generate the process of planning.
Yeah. I'll just answer up here. Thank you for that, Jen. That's an excellent question. So with the paintings, as there's more to come than what's just been displayed here, but they're sort of falling into a couple of core themes. And so we're thinking about designing the co-design community resilience plan around those core themes. So there's a lot of water theme paintings. There's a couple of fire theme paintings. There's also paintings about food. So when we're co-designing this, we're going to look at, that has been communicated to us as an issue, but we also want to use it to communicate it as an issue to people who might not be aware of this. And by making it really local. So this painting of the whale is from a Darwin artist who grew up in Mackay. And then, so there's a little bit of crossover with the artist, which makes this message really relevant to both locations. So, when something is local, you're going to pay more attention to it. So that I'm feeling like that's how it's going to come through in the community resilience plan. And as for your comment about the art exhibition, we will be using that as a source of data collection as well. So we did originally fly up one of the Mackay artists to be part of the panel discussion. And because the data that we're collecting does include artist description, artist perspective, organic discussions as well during the workshops, taking all of that and then using that as part of the data as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you. I really enjoyed the presentation and such important work at any time. I think it struck me that this sort of where my mind went was the translation work that's going on here. First Nations knowledges to science, but also art to science as well, and all these complex things. And sort of going on a little bit of Jen's question of the epistemics. I think I'm sort of interested in whether and how both the medium and the and First Nations knowledges that you're listening through it are sort of provoking new questions about how we understand what climate change means, or what mitigation and adaptation means, and maybe is it raising tensions or different directions in how we might address it.
So how we might address like the tensions arising from.
So tensions are around like perhaps what the climate science might say, not necessarily suggesting it's contradicting that, but just a different way of seeing it or coming that.
Yeah, I think this is where the framework really plays a huge role in the project. So it's understanding that the Indigenous knowledges, which is represented by the SciCAD, it's inherently valuable, but it's often misunderstood by Western institutions. And so there's a lot of work that needs to go into getting that Indigenous knowledges and then preparing it for, to make it applicable in this context, which would be the community resilience plan. And so there's a lot that, and that's sort of like the work and the data analysis and the research side sort of comes into it. So we're taking the Indigenous knowledges, being the art and the artworks and the discussions about country and the connection to country, and taking all of that and then putting in the work or the wukama to make it nourishing and to share with everybody. Yeah.
Any other questions? I have a question for you, Sharna.
Okay.
The Healthy Environments and Lives Network, which you're a key member of in the Indigenous reference group, what sort of input does that have in the wider network of the 100 partners, researchers across the nation on this project?
Yes.
Or the relationship and relevance of that?
Yeah, so just for context for everyone, the Healthy Environments and Lives Network, or the HEAL Network, consists of over 100 different researchers, and we get together and collaborate on climate change projects. And so it's split up into a couple of different themes, and Professor Ford and I work across the Indigenous reference group, and we also work across the theme of Indigenous knowledges and systems. And so that's a core theme where we're not the only project within that network that looks at different ways of using Indigenous knowledges in climate resilience. So that was probably a better way to answer your question. I'm sorry, could you repeat your question? Sorry, Linda.
I was thinking more along the lines of the Indigenous reference group that are nationally based, and I thought maybe you could talk about Frances Nona and Caroline Dean's contribution to this space.
Yes, so the Frances Nona and Caroline Dean are both Indigenous researchers within the HEAL Network, and Caroline's also a nutritionist like myself, and she does a lot of work around food insecurity. And Frances Nona has a very interesting project right now called Art. It's privileging art voice in Torres Strait. So it's like similar work, and he's using art to communicate a lot of the project aspects of it. So he's discussed ideas around perhaps using art as a participant information sheet, for example, and that all comes back down to that communication side. So we have a very structured Western way of looking at things and looking at information, and I think that predominantly exists in Western institutions and Western, societies. When you move outside of that, it starts to change a little bit. So when we use art, we use music, we use culture, because Indigenous people all over the world just have a different understanding, and it's a little bit more nuanced and it requires a little bit more work. So I think having them on this project is very beneficial. Having the NT communities of practice on this project is very beneficial. So we've got a team down at Alice Springs, and they have so much research around heat and climate and health. They have a lot of citizen science work as well. So this is like one project, but it's also a part of like a wider goal, I suppose, around introducing Indigenous knowledges into Western institutions and how that can also help for climate change solutions.
Thank you, Sharna.
Thanks, Linda.
I have a couple of questions from Zoom.
Yep.
Andrew Taylor says, thank you for a thought-provoking talk. The artwork is amazing and the message is critical as well. My question is, after the exhibition, where do you hope this leads? How could the work be used for influencing policy?
Well, after this work, so the co-design community resilience plan, I do have some ideas about what to do and where to lead in policy, but those are discussions to go further down the track. I do know that we want to capture sort of what's happening here in Darwin right now. So I know that a lot of people are displaced. And so we're hoping to go out there with some art materials and have some conversations, hold another art workshop just about the recent floods and everything like that.
From Kevin Pollard, thank you, Sharna, for a very interesting presentation. My question is, how are the artists communicating what they think are some solutions to threats to food security because of climate change?
Yep, so we leave that quite open and flexible as to how they want to communicate that. So the Indigenous artists are a range of, different people from different occupations. Some people have given very detailed written data, and then other people are just giving very verbal, organic discussions. And then we're just capturing all of that and then putting it together.
Final question from you, Joshi. Thank you, Sharna, for the insightful presentation. I'm really interested in how art can help establish a shared baseline of understanding in communities. From your experience, how can we thoughtfully distinguish between risks arising from climate change and those from other social or environmental pressures in a way that respects First Nations knowledge systems, cultural practices, and community-led decision-making?
That is a huge question. So I can't speak on that directly, but I can speak on some of the other work happening in the HEAL network itself in terms of like evaluating the benefits and the risk of like what is particularly climate change induced and what is just like a general social determinant of health. Yeah.
Isn't that why you're developing the community resilience plan?
Yeah. Yeah.
And will that be discussed with the Indigenous reference group or HEAL?
Yeah, absolutely. So we plan to take the plan and then put it into the wider zeitgeist of the HEAL network as well as Charles Darwin University.
Any other questions? Well, let's give Sharna the applause.
And I might just give a round of applause for one of the artists who have joined us online today as well.
Oh, thank you, Sharna.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for coming.